look at Billboard, you look at hip hop around the globe, you look at countries like Jamaica, you look at Bob Marley, a single man impacted the globe. The globe, like everyone knows who Bob Marley is, what Jamaica is, and what it represents. That's how unique it is. Mm. And that's how unique Black people and Black culture is.
Welcome to Anatomy of a Strategy. I'm Stephanie Forster, and if you're new here, Anatomy of a Strategy explores the hidden psychology and behaviors that drive marketing strategies. You may have noticed my co-host Tara is away this week on a long overdue vacation, but she will be back co-hosting with me again next episode. This is the fourth episode in a mini-series we're calling The Anatomy of White Supremacy in Marketing, where we're looking at the ways in which marketing practices, institutions, and systems contribute to anti-Black racism and perpetuate white supremacy. So you might recall our last episode where we spoke with Danica Nelson about how important it is to have representation in marketing, especially in senior roles. And as we've noticed in past episodes, there's not a lot of Black leadership represented in the marketing world. So that's why we were so excited to speak to Nate Nichols. He's the founder of Palette Group, a commercial creative agency that focuses on community, which he runs with his life partner, Steffi. Great name, by the way. And he's also the creative director of Allyship in Action, a collective that works with vendors and agencies to actively promote diversity within the industry. So for Nate, everything is so deeply rooted in empathy, and the circumstances of his upbringing really influenced how he sees the world and his approach, and the importance of what he calls decentering. So you'll hear why decentering is so essential if you want to be an effective leader and really bring about positive change. So let's get into it.
Stef, we have here on Zoom, I am so excited, Nate Nichols of Palette Group and the founder of the Allyship in Action Summit. Welcome.
Welcome.
Nate, you've been busy.
Yeah, been having fun. Having a lot of fun. And I will say it's co-founder of Allyship in Action. So my partner, my life partner is a wonderful human being. She's German, and she's a partner of Palette Group as well. And, her and I have just been striding step and lock for the past 6 or 7 months. So, there's no way Allyship in Action going to Cyber Summit would be what it is without her. So definitely want to make sure she's acknowledged, and that is honored because it's definitely nothing but the truth.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about, so you, earlier in the pandemic, you did the Freelancer Cyber Summit. Is that what it was called, right? So that was like, you had already been spurred into action to create an online event to answer a call to a need. Mm-hmm. So had that you already had some experience from that.
Steffi is a freelancer and also a partner of Palette Group, right? So the bulk of her career the past 2 years was freelancing experientially with other production companies and agencies after she left corporate America. And so I've just been running Palette Group the past 8 years. And, she wanted to understand what it meant to be a freelancer and build her own career and design and produce experiences on her own before we sort of joined forces properly with Palette Group and to scale that side of the business. So her first year, she just killed it. Like St. Ives, YouTube, Google, Under Armour, NBA, just produced all year round nonstop. Her first year as a freelancer. And then going into the second year, we did our first new business trip together to Vancouver, and we had a great job. We had brands and organizations excited to produce experiences and creative with us. And then the pandemic hit, and then everything just pushed on pause.
Right.
And, as an agency, we have our systems, we have our, vendors, our contracts with our CPA and our bookkeeper, and we have everything in line in case something like this would happen. But not everybody has that privilege and access to those resources, specifically freelancers. And these freelancers are the front line of our industry, of our business. We work solely with freelancers. We're a team of 4. And then the rest of it is just a roster of creatives that we called on per project to produce with. And so some of these projects stopped, everyone else's project stopped, and we just saw everyone just sort of freaking out, just freaking out, like flailing their arms, like the guy in front of the
The gas
car
station?
dealership.
The inflatable tube man. Yeah.
And we're like, whoa, I could just email my CPA right now and give questions to the answers, because I have them on a retainer. We need to share this. Like, we need to ensure that the community of people that we rely on to do our business feel secure and confident that they can make it through this, and that there is potentially hope on the other end of this. And at minimum, they not collect unemployment,
Mm.
And so we wanted to develop and produce a platform for freelancers to feel like they have each other through this, and to have an industry that has their back through this as well. So that's what we did. We bridged the gap between the advertising industry. We called on executives from like Virtue and I can't remember now. There's so many big agencies and brands that we collaborated. Adweek was a part of it. David Griner moderated one of our first panels back in the day when we first did it. Just like a bunch of different agencies and brands that we had collaborated with to come to the table and speak to the freelance community, very intentionally. TD Bank, Foot Locker, just an amazing bunch of humans just sharing a wealth of, there is hope and there are opportunities right now.
I love that. And it sounds, just the way that you phrase that, it kind of sounds like you were doing a similar thing with the Allyship and Action Summit. It's like the same sort of ethos, but totally different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. It was the values are like from Palette Group, realistically, right? Because Palette Group is rooted in empathy, it's rooted in imagination, it's rooted in like unfiltering, it's rooted in honesty and empathy. And so in a way that we honor culture, we honor community whenever we produce content. Like we don't do a project without whatever community we're representing in the final deliverable present as fuck inside of the creative and production process. That's where it starts.
That's amazing. I'm wondering, the way that you're describing how Palette Group operates, it sounds like you're trying to be different than a lot of other agencies, and you're doing that consciously. What made you decide that this was something that had to be done in a different way versus the traditional way that's not quite as maybe empathetic or as, community-based as what you guys are doing?
It's the sense of like the loneliness I felt as a freelancer. And, I freelanced all through my college career. I wound up having a book of like 300 plus clients by the time I graduated in Philadelphia. I didn't know anybody in Philadelphia, but I just like got after it. True Gary Vee hustle culture style, just like barely eating, just going for it. And it was lonely and it was sad, and I was, my environment was depressing. I was over the moon, excited and just joyous and like moving because I had people around me that sort of inspired me, motivated me, taught me. And, they were Black men who were teaching me lessons about leadership. They were white men who were teaching me management skills and how to public speak. There were, Black women having my back and ensuring that I understood how to treat people. And there were just all these different types of humans coming to me to ensure that I had values and principles that could show up in my work, because I didn't have an agency telling me like, look, fuck your personal life. Your biases don't matter here. There are rules and there are language, there are systems you have to abide by when you're in, big holding company or this agency that's been around for 10 years. It was just me. And so when I founded Palette Group 8 years ago, I had bought the company, the agency that I was working for at the time. And I had made a list of the things I liked and had made a list of things I didn't like about, working for that agency. And I just committed to doing only the things that I enjoyed and only the things that gave me life and made me happy. And a lot of it was culture and community. And that's honestly something that has been with me my whole life. Like that same sort of identity of like me reaching out to humans in the world and kind of finding my values reflected in them to sort of grow in myself is something I had to do as a child as well. So this is something that, like, you say where it came from. It's like I was born with it because, my household wasn't easy. My mom she had a mental disability and she was put in a psych ward and I was put into foster care. And then when I was reunited with my family, I still didn't have a father and I had a mother who was dealing with what she had to deal with. And she didn't know how to manage me. I didn't know how to manage myself. I didn't trust anybody in my home. I didn't trust anybody at my school or in the streets. So I just had to like consistently work to find humans that had the right values and principles that I felt like I could feel safe around. And they wound up being the people that like just moved into town, or the black skaters were like, skaters weren't cool. If you were black and a skater in 2000s, you weren't cool yet. It was like late 2000 when Pharrell kind of hit the scene, like he made it cool with streetwear. And so there was just these humans that like had lifestyles and values that I enjoyed. And I just realized how important it was to keep different types of people, you know, at the table to ensure, you know, your ego isn't informing decisions, period. Because who am I and what is my ego at the table for creating concepts for a tampon brand, creating concepts for a gym that, you know, serves mostly white collar men. I don't know their life experience. I don't know a woman's life experience. So who and what is my ego to be the only one at the table being the decision maker? It's just not fair. It's not fair to the community. It's not fair to the audience. When I say community, it's not fair to, you know, the humans who have great ideas that we should be looking at and should be honoring. And I think that, you know, the challenge with racism in advertising is, you know, everyone is centering themselves, especially white men. Like everyone's just like, you know, I have to be the one who gets it done. I have to have 30,000 tabs open because I have to be more productive than anyone else because I must win. But why?
Yeah.
Why? Because your ego?
Yeah. I love this, and I love your approach, and I love that it really is rooted in your life experience of growing up and realizing that you need to build trust and bonds and community and like collaboration with others, and that you actually, like, it's so inspiring to hear that you built that into your own business model, which seems to work really well. You guys work with I'm trying to train myself not to say guys. You all work with like some pretty like major brands too, and it's, you know, I know as a small agency ourselves, like you almost have to, like, I've found that we've had to have that very professional front facing thing, the fancy office with the lease and all that stuff, just to show them that we were worthy of working with these big brands. But you prove that you don't have to do that.
There's a sense of self that I think people desire from themselves, and they don't give themselves permission to step and stand in it. That identity of self-expression. They sort of, life sort of beats you down and then you don't feel like you can be that self-expressed. And so our work and our values is the opposite of that. And I think that is what attracts people. Is like, wow, could I be that much of myself? Can I give that little flux? Is that possible? Can I give myself that permission? And I think that's sort of what we want to help people do, is unfilter your imagination. And that's the core ethos of Power Group, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how you were saying,
oops,
sorry, go ahead, Tara.
I was just going to say, like, that unfiltering is great. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about how that translates in all aspects of the marketing work that you do as well.
I think the way it translates for us is when brands come to us, companies come to us, there's an expectation that they have been doing things a certain way, a traditional way that's gotten them where they are. And the audience isn't content anymore. Their stakeholders aren't content anymore. And they just want to create a new standard, break through the status quo. And the word just unfiltered immediately just like rips off the Band-Aid of that thought. It's like, let's just cut through the bullshit and let's get back to like what it means to be imaginative, and not in a way where you're just like swiping over a filter on Instagram and you're like, cute. It's like, no, let's dig deep. Let's redefine, reset, how you position the core principles of this idea and position the core principles of your creative and your user experience. And so we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to help unfilter it. And so that's our true vision, is help you take what you've already established and reset it in a way that you feel excited to sort of break it down, and make it better and do something great for the community that you want to serve, and that's sort of like what we did for Allyship in Action as well. It's like, we made this thing that was really hard to talk about. And we said, yeah, it's fucking hard. It is hard to talk about racism. It is hard to look in the mirror and be like, I am racist. But you know what? That's what we need to do, is we need to say it, and we need to be okay with rebuilding, resetting our own values, resetting and repositioning our company's values, doing the work to ensure more Black people, more people of color, more LGBTQ plus chronically ill, disabled communities have access to the spaces that we get to have access to, and be okay with it. And have, it's going to be challenging, but you've been challenged your whole life. What the fuck is the difference?
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I was thinking when I asked that question, unfiltered is really important right now because things are messy, because things are hard. And I think for so many years, as a white woman, I have held back from really examining my own biases, my own racism, because of that white fragility that exists, right? And white fragility is the manifestation of filtering in so many ways. It's everybody else's problem. Look what they're doing over there. Oh, tut, that's so bad. But when it comes time to challenging ourselves, it's even in the beginning when Stephanie and I were talking about doing this series, both of us were really nervous. What if we say something stupid or the wrong thing? And then we kind of realized, well, we kind of have to say something stupid and the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And what's the big deal if we do? We're not going to die. We'll be fine. It's okay.
That's the ultimate unfiltering, right? And that's when we learn. When we unfilter, we actually learn and we grow in those moments. So I love that. That's one of your core ethos. It's so perfect. It's forever, but for a time, it is incredibly relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not only is it more fair, you were talking about you wouldn't make a tampon ad, because you're not a woman. It's not just that it's unfair, but it's also more effective, I think now, maybe, to have those other voices come in and have opinions on things that they should have been having opinions on from the beginning. Do you find brands now are sort of coming around and realizing that kind of messaging is more effective?
1,000%. I think it's just let's put it like this. You look at the numbers look at Billboard, you look at hip hop, you look at the impact of our culture, of Black culture on pop culture, on society, around the globe. You look at countries like Jamaica, you look at Bob Marley, the global impact of a single man in a religion called Rastafarianism, based on from a little baby island, impacted the globe. The globe, everyone knows who Bob Marley is, what Jamaica is, and what it represents. That's how unique it is. And that's how unique Black people and Black culture is. And think about how more dynamic they are from an experience perspective, just as people in their culture. We are just have so much more dynamism in history than a lot of other cultures, in a way that's not demanding and conquering. It's hey, we are just here being self-expressed and creating just look at the creativity pouring from Black people and Black culture around the globe in history, period. You know, in every single vein of our lives. And it just comes down to what you said, Stephanie, is effectiveness. Like, of course, you take the most creative being on earth and you put them as part of your team, like, your team's going to be more effective. Like, you're just going to be more effective. And I'm not going to hold any punches, because everything I said is just facts. Like, they're just pure facts. And if you do the same thing with any other culture, you put them on a platform with any other community in a room, they're going to bring an experience and a sense of dynamism that you don't have at all, right? They have life experience, they have inspiration, they have family experiences that bring so much more of, narrative and thoughts and ideologies that will add more value to your concepts. And of course, it's going to be more effective, because that's what your brands and your clients want, is they want you to think differently and be effective in a way that they haven't seen before. So if you're the same old people, think of the same old ideas with the same old cultures around you at the table, of course, your ideas are going to be flat and boring and status quo.
Yeah. Well, and I wish that we had Tina, our producer, one of our team members, our producer here. I think you guys interacted on Twitter briefly, but so Tina is she's Canadian, but she came from South Africa, and her family is Nigerian. And when she first joined the team, I mean, knew that she was like super talented, a really great storyteller, and I just kept telling myself, like, she would talk about these concepts she would have for making videos, for telling stories and approaching. And I would be like, I do not understand, like, what she's doing here. Like, it was almost like we were even though we were both speaking English, she was very clear in her language. It wasn't quite landing, but I learned really quickly just to be like, just trust the Tina way. I was like, sort of like what I told myself, because every single time her outcome was like, man, I would never have thought of that, and the end result was like so much better than anything that I've seen or yeah. I mean, if it's okay, I will share some of her work with you, and you'll be like, she's really good. Just don't poach her.
The final product speaks for itself, for sure. Mike, you can't take Tina.
And I wouldn't have, necessarily said, oh, Tina, it's because of your history, because you come from South Africa, because you're an immigrant to Canada, and that you operate, in the Black community in Toronto. But I can't, I also, that would be like dismissing a huge part of that experience that she does bring to the table, what makes her a super valuable part of the team. So I think the second part of this is also like making sure that it's not only having the Nate Nichols or the Tinas at the table, but also trusting and giving power and voice and autonomy.
Yeah, that's decentering. How do you, you got to look yourself in the face and decenter yourself. And that's a key element of leadership in general. It doesn't matter what walk of life or culture. It's like your job as a leader, as a CEO, it should not be about you. Your job is to build a system where people can thrive. Anybody can thrive, right? Where there's a culture of, purpose, meaning a feeling of fulfillment, and systems where you can thrive professionally. And that takes a sense of decentering. Because if your whole team, you're not going to make everyone happy, but if there are pockets and communities of people on your team that are not happy, it's your job to solve it. And if you can't, you got to go. You shouldn't be at the table, because that's a part of your job as being a leader. Is decentering yourself and humbling it and making time for the things that you feel like are uncomfortable.
I know that through both, now you've done 2 Allyship and Action Summits. The first one was June 18th. The second one was August 4th. Are there more, I hope, to come, I guess? I mean, it's an ongoing conversation. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yep.
So how do you I'm going to sound very white person, but how do you codify this into something that actually is that actionable thing? Or is that me being too much of a white person?
Codifying things is important, right? Because it's just a bunch of noise unless it's codified. So I'm with it. I love the question. And so the front end of Allyship in Action is these ongoing conversations in summit series. So, leaders, white leaders, companies and organizations can step behind their, company statements and be a person and speak to the specific topic and how they're going to create change. And so that way we can keep them accountable. It's like you're going to say something, and now that we know, we're going to hold you to it. And now your team knows they're going to hold you to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that sense of accountability there that now gets opened up. With grace comes accountability. And so now that you have a bit of grace, we get to hold you accountable to it. So that's like one point. And then the back end of Allyship in Action is a technology platform we're building out. So David Angelo from David and Goliath, he was a part of our first Allyship in Action. He granted us $100,000 to build out technology. And this technology is going to be basically you'll have an agency or a brand, corporate America in general. Each company will have their own company page. And we're going to be doing a survey system. So we built out technology to survey your teams and get workforce diversity data. And so we'll have your current employment workforce diversity data. And then we're also going to be creating a tracking system. So it'll be a certification tool. So as you work on your projects, tentpole or evergreen for your clients, because you guys are agency owners and operators, you'll be able to upload your projects to allyshipinaction.com, and you'll have a benchmark yearly to achieve to remain certified. So depending on the number of employees you have, let's say you have 50 employees, you'll have to fulfill 12 projects a year, and 12 of those projects will be 50% staffed diversely. And by diversity, we mean Black, Indigenous, people of color, non-binary, LGBTQ+, chronically ill, disabled. And then that data will also be tracked back to your company page. So we can not only see where you are, but we can see how you're proactively working towards workforce diversity. And as time moves on, we can see how you're retaining people, because we'll continue to do the surveys, and you'll see if you've retained the people of color and Black people and LGBTQ+ in your team annually. Are they being promoted? So have they gone up a level in the hierarchy? And imagine that from, a macro level. We zoom all the way out. Industry now. You can see where production stands with hiring chronically ill. You can see where advertising stands with hiring LGBTQ+, retaining them and promoting them. You can see if lawyers are actually having the industry, that vertical has a diverse workforce within that community, that vertical. And so now communities that have been discriminated against can kind of see where it's safe for them, where there are opportunities, where they can sustain and scale their livelihoods very clearly. And so that's the vision, is to use this summit series to sort of keep the conversation going and feed the fire for the technology we're building, to continue to ensure that data is informing how the world is becoming more equitable for people and communities that are discriminated against.
Very cool. That is a really exciting project. Now, question on that, because from the data that we saw that was published in Adweek, I think it's like around 5% of the marketing industry are, Black professionals, and like 1.2% are in senior positions. Do you have benchmarks? Like, is it on par with populations or more? Or like, do you have benchmarks that or is that something that's going to sort of like work out with the goals around this over time?
So I think over time, natural benchmarks will be created. We won't set them just because if you're a huge corporation, it just may take you longer strategically to build out systems. You can, if you're a huge Fortune 100 company, you could hire a bunch of Black people, a bunch of LGBTQ+, chronically ill. It does not mean you have a culture and the systems in place to retain them. It just wouldn't be fair to anyone if we moved as fast as we want. So, our goal is to give people the data and create benchmarks and standards for the industry to all commit to, and then have ranking systems. So then you have like a bit of ego in the game, and you're like, well, I don't want to be, I don't want to be like top 50. I want to be top 10% of a diverse workforce, and I want to see my retention and promotional numbers go up. So, HR, what are our goals next year to ensure we're in the top 10%? HR, what is our goal? What's our strategy for ensuring we're in the top 1%? How do we ensure our projects are being recognized on Allyship in Action in a way that like our Cannes Lion, winning project is staffed diversely, and we get to say that and be that and be proud of that. So we're trying to like shift it to be a standard and normalize the idea of having workforce diversity be public, not just from the agency side, but the brand side and all across corporate America, and then give them specific metrics and benchmarks for awards, so recognition. And we won't set those out the gate, but we're going to be able to quantify that and codify that as we get more and more organizations on board, and to be able to quantify what makes you award winning. Is it your project? It's the creative, because that's what it should be about, right? It's the creative, like that you've now hired diversity, have dynamic creatives, and be able to, do the same thing a one club would do, and identify the projects that are like really dope. And
you could tie in results as well with that, which would encourage more participation. This reminds me, do you know the 3% conference in Kat Gordon? Yeah. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of what she's done for a bunch of years, and she's actually seen progress. It, is a conference, but there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. And she, this year they did it virtually as well. And they had Nathan, I think, was it Nathan Young? One of the people from 600 and Rising. But I really love what you're doing. I mean, you're doing it more grassroots focused, which is, I love grassroots. I've always been a big fan of grassroots, and I feel like it works so much better because it really organically evolves, instead of, like the top-down board that thinks, this is what we're going to make people do. Like that always falls apart somehow. I just love your organic approach. I gotta stop geeking out about it, but I do.
Yeah, no, just jumping off what Tara said, like I think this approach where you can use technology and data to sort of ensure accountability is very different than like the board members being like, let's hire 10 Black people, and then being like, we did good, we're done now, and not ensuring that they're advancing in their careers, or that they're getting really great projects, or that they're actually, what all the things you were saying. So I think that's really, really interesting and so important.
Mm-hmm. And that the tools, you also with the Allyship in Action Summits, and I'm now part of the Slack group, which I love. I do more listening in general, which I should probably get involved more. But there's actually projects going on in there, which, sort of speaks to the tools. And one of my favorite project, and I think this also, because you have to address this side of things, is around the client code of conduct. Mm-hmm. And so I'm all like, oh yeah, so we're really proactive and we're doing all this stuff, but then you sit down with clients who you rely on to pay those retainers so that you can continue to hire, and how do you create a conversation where you can push back on them, because they have a lot of power in those situations? And can you talk a little bit to some of those projects, and that one in particular?
Totally. We're tweeting about that, I think.
Yep.
So what's fun about the community is, so I'm a Black man, and this moment is trying, for our emotional capacity, and the emotional labor in this moment is like on a 10, just like beating all the time. Like it's just 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And so certain people have a certain level of emotional labor they're willing to share during this moment, certain Black people and people of color. And so I'm on the end of the spectrum where I don't mind. I have a bunch of grace. I've had a tough life, and, I've just been able to granted the ability to have grace. not without accountability though. And so I think those aspects are important to go into this conversation, because I feel strongly that, this is a problem that white people have developed and it should be theirs to solve. I will help facilitate and help build a platform for people to come together. At the end of the day, this is your problem to fix. And so the Slack community is amazing because they sort of come together around specific challenges that they see have harmed their peers professionally, and they truly feel like it's their job now and their duty, a part of their role now and their job description in between the lines, is to ensure that like our peers that have lost our trust and faith need to feel safe again. And we will do anything it takes, including developing a code of conduct policy, including developing like a wiki, all these things. We have more things that we're going to be rolling out soon. And so people have just stepped up to ensure that like our peers feel safe. And it's just not fear. How do I walk around feeling safe, but my peers do not? And I'm in the reading watching, my colleague's face melt because of what a client said. That can't be a thing. I can't have that. And so, that's sort of where we are with it and why we sort of developed out the sort of workflow that we have. We're like, I'll just throw a challenge in, from way back from the other side of the field, and whoever catches it, gets to run with it. And so that's exciting and it feels good. Mm-hmm. And someone from Wyden Kennedy found that code of conduct policy, reached out to Steffi, and like they said they loved it. So like that's awesome too. Like even though big companies, like big huge agencies, are using this stuff. Code of conduct, and speaking of that specifically, holding our clients accountable, that's a tough one, because to your point, like our livelihoods as agency owners and operators rely on these clients and rely on their cash flow. And I personally I know what it means to be broke and have $0. As a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult, and as an adult, I just know what it has felt like. And so I've never had a safety net in my entire life. I'm still like hundreds of thousands of dollars in college debt. Like there's just no such thing as a safety net for me. And so when I step to a client, in my mind, there's just nothing to lose. Like I've already lost a lot, and dignity is the only thing that matters. And I just hope in a conversation where I have to terminate, because I've terminated a lot of clients, for indignified experiences where they're disrespecting me or my team, and just been like, no, this ain't it. Like you can't disrespect my team. Like we are human beings and we are professionals, and you're going to respect both of those parts of us, period. And, like just the conversation of just that, and we go our separate ways, and it sucks because, just lost $50, $30, $100,000, but it's just what it is. Like we're hustlers. We'll figure it out how to replace that income, just like we figured out how to replace the income during the pandemic. So, it's just knowing that new time that we've created in terminating that contract and that partnership. And I'm not, there's no gray area, as you can tell, Tara. Like there's just none. Like there's no time for that shit. Like period. You need to make that decision. And I have Bessie Dead tattooed on my arm because, decision making is super important. And when you make a decision, you cut off a whole reality, and you have to get present to that new one as radically as you can and just get productive in that new reality. And that means grinding and hustling to replace that income. And that's inherent in being an owner operator of an agency. You'll figure it out. And I think, and I'm talking to you, Tara, you like have the dynamism, you have the charisma to sort of be able to figure that out when the time is necessary. And I think we just sort of have to get present to that. Like we aren't where we are as creatives, as entrepreneurs, as freelancers for no reason. And we can't be taking shit for no reason either. So we need to take pride in the fact that we've got here and that we know what it takes to get here and to move past the shit that this person's giving us, this company's giving us.
Yeah, sometimes you need a no compromise, no bullshit approach, honestly.
Facts. So much more liberating, because then it's just like there's no gray area. It's just you fucked up. Like, and we said clearly that you messed up. You're disrespectful. You just disrespectful, period. You need to respect humans in their life experience.
And it's particularly bad in the marketing and advertising industry.
Yep. It's just white men, man. Just fucking it all up. I don't understand it either. Literally.
I love ending the podcast on that note. Thank you so much, Nate Nichols, for joining us. You can follow Nate on Twitter at @TheNichols, NICHOLS, or check out palettegrp.com. Join us next episode where Tara will be back and we'll be chatting with Siobhan Cherry, who works at Spark, a co-working space based in Baltimore. We touched on all kinds of subjects from pandering to the Lady Antebellum controversy and colorism. Remember when Zoe Saldana was cast as Nina Simone? Yeah, you definitely want to hear what Siobhan has to say about that. So stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. Thank you to our content manager, Amo Samal, our audio engineer and editor, Joe Pacheco, and our incredible staff at Truly Inc. who help these stories come alive. The show is written and hosted by me, Stephanie Forster, and my co-host, Tara Hunt. If you enjoyed this episode, there are many more to come, so please let us know what you think. If we missed anything, criticisms, comments, bring it on. We want to hear from you. Subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Send us your feedback, ideas, suggestions, and yes, even your complaints. We're happy to hear them on Twitter. The podcast is found at Anatomy of a Strat. I'm found at Stephanie F. That's STEFANIF. And you can follow Tara at Miss Rogue, MISSROGUE. Also, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and share with your friends, colleagues, boss, family, anyone who you think would benefit from listening. Stay safe and see you soon.